Hello, sports fan, and welcome to the Packs for Breakfast All-Star Team. This is going to be our shortstop and third baseman. We're going to do that half of the infield. We're going to mix things up. Usually I'll take second baseman with shortstop, or I'll do, first and third, or I'll do all the infielders. This time, we're going to do shortstop, third base. We're going with the left side of the infield. Now, I've still got 9 players and 2 managers to talk about. And the 9 players and the 2 managers that I still have to talk about, all of them I'm excited about talking about. All of them. They're all, even the 2 managers. I cannot wait to talk about them. I cannot wait to do that video. But right now, we're going to start with 3 amazing players here. Now, you might look at that and you go, Randy, you got 2 third basemen. I mean, do you and Chris know what you're doing? You got 2 third basemen. When you guys open up those packs, every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Mountain Time. Do you know what you're doing? Because you got 2 third basemen. Guess what? Later we're going to have 2 first basemen. But we're going to decide who we're going to take out of these 2 third basemen. It's going to be a hard choice. So let's start with Alan Trammell, the guy that's locked up the starting shortstop job. Trammell batted .285 in his career with 185 career home runs, 2,365 hits, 1,003 RBIs. He was a 6-time All-Star. He was a World Series MVP in 1984. Last time the Tigers won a World Series. This year, they might get close if they can get Bregman. Watch out for that Tigers team if they can get Bregman, because they got Flaherty back, who pitched well for them last year. Skubal pitched amazing, of course, Cy Young winner. They've got some young players that hopefully will improve. Do not look to Torkelson to improve, because I think he might be cooked. But Alan Trammell played 20 seasons, all of them with the Detroit Tigers, did win a World Series with them. He was a 4-time Gold Glover at shortstop. That means the man can field. He was voted into the Hall of Fame in 2018 at 81% of the vote. He got in on the Modern Baseball Era Committee, which I guess means he didn't make it in on his initial run, but he definitely is deserving, and I'm glad that this Modern Era Committee said, "Go Allen." He was also a manager, I guess. I don't remember Alan Trammell as a manager. And there's a good reason for that. He managed the Tigers, he managed the Diamondbacks, and he had a 38% winning percentage, or 39%. No, he wasn't winning a lot of games. If he could have batted .392, that would have been something. But he was only a manager with a .392 winning percentage. As a player, though, he had a 70.6 WAR in his career. He did even add 236 stolen bases. Alan Trammell is one of those guys that once he finally left the league, you forget about him, because a lot of American League shortstops came along and eclipsed him. I mean, definitely A-Rod and Jeter came along. I mean, even you could maybe say a little bit Miguel Tejada was, I don't think he eclipsed him, but he was definitely good. Omar Vizquel, guys like that. But Alan Trammell could hit and he could field the position. He was very good at what he did. His best season was 1987, when he hit 28 home runs, had 105 RBIs, and batted .343. It's the reason I like doing these, when we get these card packs, because I can spend more time talking about some of these great players that time may forget. And Alan Trammell is one of those guys that time can forget. The 2 guys that are next to him, Schmidt and Brett, they're going to be hard to forget, because they're uber legends. These are both first ballot Hall of Famers. Let's start with Mike Schmidt. 18 seasons he played with the Philadelphia Phillies. He had a .267 career batting average. He was a thumper. 548 career home runs, 2,234 career hits, 1,595 career RBIs. He was a 12-time All-Star. He was also the World Series MVP in 1980, so he got that ring. I love seeing great players get the ring. Great players that don't get the ring, sometimes they kind of bum me out, because it's like somebody as good as like Barry Sanders. He doesn't have a ring. He'll never get a ring, and he deserves one. He just never was on the right team to do it. Mike Schmidt was also a 3-time NL MVP. He had 10 gold gloves at third. He was the 8th time. Here's the thing about Mike Schmidt. He led the league in home runs, the National League in home runs, 8 times. 8 times. Now, the only sad part about that is he never hit 50, but yet he led the league in home runs 8 times. But he did have a year where he hit 48 home runs in 1980. When he was the World Series MVP, and I think it was one of his MVP years for the National League. He had 48 home runs, 121 RBIs, batted .286. He had a 106.9 career WAR. He was a first ballot, like I said, first ballot Hall of Famer in 95, 96.5% of the vote. Once again, this is the kind of stuff that bugs me about the stupid Hall of Fame voters, because this is an obvious first ballot Hall of Famer. 10 gold gloves, 12 All-Stars, 3 MVPs, 548 career home runs. And back when he was voted in, that 500 mark was the magic number to get into the Hall of Fame. So I can't imagine how there's 3.5% of the voters that say, no, you don't deserve to be in there on your first ballot. But now we have a tough decision. Let's put him against George Brett's numbers. George Brett, different kind of hitter. Not really a thumper, but he could put it over the wall. George Brett had a .305 career batting average, almost 40 points higher. He had 3,154 hits, over 900 more than Mike Schmidt. Brett played 21 seasons, so he did play a few more. The thing that you will notice about these 3 players, all 3 of them started and finished their careers with the same team. The Tigers, the Phillies, and the Royals, those guys never wore other uniforms. Although Mike Schmidt, I might have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure he was a Philly his whole career. I know that George Brett was a Royal pretty much his entire career. George Brett had 317 home runs. Like I said, not an amazing thumper, but still 317 home runs means he's a threat to put it over the wall. He had 1,596 RBIs. Now remember, Schmidt had 1,595 RBIs. So George Brett in 3 more seasons got 1 more ribby. 900 more hits, a lot fewer homers, better batting average. George Brett, 13-time All-Star. Think about it, these 2 guys played in relatively the same era. So basically, a lot of the time, your starting third baseman for the American League was going to be George Brett. Your starting a third baseman for the National League was going to be Schmidt. So it's pretty amazing that it's like these 2 guys were basically the anchors. They were just always there. George Brett was the MVP in 1980. He did win a World Series, which is good. He only has 1 gold glove. So his hitting is probably what made him good. But I don't think he was a terrible fielder. He just only got the 1 gold glove. He was a 3-time AL batting champion. He also made the Hall of Fame on his first ballot, 98.2% of the vote in 1999. Once again, you look at the numbers, he's first ballot Hall of Famer, and no doubt. He had an 88.6 WAR in his career. Now in 1980, he did win, of course, his MVP. He had 24 home runs with 118 RBIs. The amazing thing about that 1980 run, he batted .390. He was batting .400 up until September 19th, and then he got cold. He went like 4 for 27 or something, and his batting average fell to like .384. So, I mean, George Brett, we were all watching. I mean, it was one of those things. It's like, even me being a little kid in 1980, I remember this being a thing. And this is back before we had ESPN or anything like that. It's just local Colorado channels, and they were talking about the Kansas City Royal George Brett, because Denver didn't have a major league team back then. All we had was, they might have even been called the Denver Bears at the time. They hadn't changed their name to the Zephyrs yet. So George Brett, I remember hearing about George Brett and remember the talk on the local sports channels about his chase for 400. So you can imagine what a big deal it would be today. I mean, of course, the best batting average since Ted Williams hit 400 is Tony Gwynn when he batted 394 for a year. I think that was in 1994. But yeah, so how do you decide who do you start at third base? Mike Schmidt is the better fielder. Mike Schmidt is the better power hitter. But George Brett is the best, or is the better pure hitter. In my opinion, I think we go with Mike Schmidt, but you let me know down in the comments, who would you take at third base? I'm going Mike Schmidt. That's nothing against George Brett. I'd make him my DH if I had Mike Schmidt, but if I had a third baseman like Mike Schmidt and George Brett, that was my problem. That's a pretty good problem to have, and it's a pretty good problem to have right here, right now, and that's All-Star for now.